Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining. Thank you for joining us for our exclusive live webinar, Decoding Grab's IPO and the Future of ASEAN Unicorns. My name is Akito Tanaka, joining from Singapore, and I'm a Chief Business News Correspondent for Nikkei Asia. Now, today, we are discussing about Grab's historic Nasdaq debut, how that went, what are the challenges moving forward, and what Grab's stock performance means to other Southeast Asian unicorns. We have two guest speakers today, or actually my colleague. One is from Singapore, and another one is from Indonesia. Kentaro Iwamoto. Hi, Kentaro.
Hi, thanks,
Right.
Hector.
Thank you. So Kentaro is a Nikkei staff writer based in Singapore. He's been covering Grab and other Southeast Asian startups in the region for about 4 years now. And we also have Shotaro. Shotaro there?
Yes.
Great.
Hi, everyone.
Hey, Shotaro. So Shotaro Tani, he's also a Nikkei staff writer based in Jakarta, Indonesia. Shotaro has been also covering Southeast Asia startup from Jakarta, about 4 years, same. Primarily Gojek and Tokopedia, which formed GoTo group early this year, which we'll be discussing in this seminar webinar as well. Now, as the narrator said, we would like to take questions at the end of the webinar, so please submit your question through the Q&A button if you're using Zoom. And we will choose a few questions and try to answer it at the end of the webinar. Great. So we would start with our discussions. Now, before we start, we titled our webinar Decoding Grab's IPO. Now, IPO literally means IPO means initial public offering. However, Grab did not go listed, did not become listed through an IPO process. It was actually it went public by a merger with a special purpose acquisition company, or it's called SPAC. But we thought the IPO was a much more relevant and familiar name, so we put that in the title. All right, so now Kentaro, let's start the conversation. So Grab made a historic Nasdaq debut. We were all waiting for this moment. It was a moment of truth for Southeast Asian unicorns. Now, how did the stock perform? How's the stock performing so far?
Thanks, Akito. I think most of the audience today are already familiar with Grab, but just briefly about the company. They are one of the biggest startups in Southeast Asia. They offer various consumer digital services on their smartphone app, ride-hailing, delivery, and e-wallet. And it's one of the best-known startups in the region. So that's why Grab's Nasdaq listing earlier this month was a significant development for Southeast Asia. And they listed on Nasdaq on December 2nd through a merger with a SPAC, which is a special purpose acquisition company. And their opening share price on December 2nd was about $13, but prices went down later. Now their shares are trading at around $7 per share now. That means Grab's market valuation now is about $26 billion, which is of course very big as a startup, but it is below their expectations because the SPAC had valued the company at about $40 billion. And just for comparison, Grab is in Singapore now the 6th largest company in terms of market cap after C Group, DBS Bank, OCBC Bank, UOB Bank, and Singapore Telecommunications.
Great, thank you. And you've been writing about Grab IPO, following this news for a long time. You've written an article before it went public. You wrote an article before after Grab made listing. So what are analysts saying about the Grab stock performance after its Nasdaq debut?
Yeah, I think many analysts say that their IPO timing was not very good because obviously the US Federal Reserve was starting to shift to tighter monetary policies affecting stock markets. And also there were a lot of concerns over the Omicron new coronavirus variant earlier this month, which also affected the stock markets globally. For Grab, ride-hailing is their core business, and ride-hailing is very sensitive to movement restrictions or lockdowns. That's about the market situation. And of course, some analysts said that investors were concerned about Grab's profitability because Grab reported hundreds of millions of dollars of net losses for the past quarters. And also competition in Southeast Asia continues to be very stiff. There are several competitive rivals in delivery or fintech spaces, and that may affect Grab's profitability going forward. But it is still 2 weeks. Many analysts say Grab is promising in the longer term because their ride-hailing business is expected to see a strong recovery in the post-COVID times. And Grab also has a financial business which has potential to be a growth driver going forward.
True. All right. Good. And you interviewed Grab's co-founder and group CEO Anthony Tan prior to the listing. Well, actually, it was like the day of the listing, and it was just few hours before he would see the stock price. How did he appear to you, and what did he tell you at this interview?
I think he shared some of Grab's strategies after the Nasdaq listing. So this company raised about 4.5 billion US dollar through this listing process. And he said they are going to invest more in technology, mapping technology, for example, so that they can build a more efficient and low-cost delivery network across the region. And he also said they will invest more in fintech so that they can build various financial services across the region. And actually, we asked him whether Grab will continue to operate only in Southeast Asian markets because now they are a listed company and public market investors might expect Grab's growth beyond the region. But he didn't clearly say yes or no, but he strongly stressed that there are still huge opportunities in Southeast Asia because the penetration rates of digital services are still very low compared to China or the US. Yeah.
Great. So the details of the interview is on Nikkei Asia, so please read it on the website if you haven't. And so right after I would say few hours after Kentaro's interview, Grab did a listing ceremony, Nasdaq listing ceremony in Singapore, which was quite unusual because Nasdaq listing ceremony usually takes place in New York, but they had to do it in Singapore because of the COVID. And we were there. We were at the ceremony, and right after the event, so the stock price was already there. As you said, it shooted up quite nicely, but then it fell quite dramatically right after that. And you caught Anthony off stage when, after he saw the actual price. At that moment, I think it was declining. How did he look sad, or what did he say?
Yeah, I spoke to him, I think just 20 minutes or 30 minutes after the trading started. But he said he didn't care about short-term stock price changes. He just saying he will focus on Grab's mission and the long-term strategy, which is super app strategy.
Yeah, and then his emotion was he was quite emotional, wasn't he? I don't know, I should share this on webinar, but his eyes were kind of red, and I'm sure that was not because of the stock price, but the excitement of the listing itself. But yeah, I think despite the stock price, I think it was quite a historic moment, and it meant a lot for Southeast Asian startup. They brought in a lot of guests at the event. There were partners, drivers, and all the people that supported Grab's listing. So that was a really interesting moment. Now, Shotaro, prior to Grab, Bukalapak also went public in Indonesia. I believe this was in stock exchange in Indonesia. Now, first of all, what does that company do, and how is its stock price performing so far?
Yeah, so Bukalapak, which is one of Indonesia's leading e-commerce startups, went public on the Indonesian Stock Exchange in early October, not October, early August. What they do is basically they have two, they have lots of businesses, but I would say two main businesses. One is the e-commerce platform business, the sort of stuff that Amazon and Rakuten do, and they have this business line called Mitra Bukalapak, which is digitizing mom and pop stores, which is called warung in Indonesia. So how they make money is they basically take commissions off those of the trades that happen in both those business segments. This was significant for Indonesia. Now, obviously, now everyone's talking about Grab, but this was actually the talk of the town back then in Southeast Asia, because this was the first tech unicorn, Indonesian tech unicorn, to list, to go public, and so the hopes were pretty high. And the share price did show that in the first day and second day of trading, they actually surged, and it hit the upper limit of the price movement in the Indonesian Stock Exchange. But since then, it's been nothing but rosy. It's not been a rosy ride for Bukalapak. Their share price shown on the screen now, 454 rupiah, around that. Their IPO price was 850 rupiah, so it's nearly half the IPO price now. But again, this is it was kind of expected, because if you think about their valuation now, it's around 3.5 billion US dollars, which was around the same valuation that they had prior to listing when they were still private. So I would say this is actually a relatively fair value. And analysts are actually still bullish. There are some metrics you look at e-commerce, like the take rate, which is basically the commission. I think global players like Amazon, they take I think the global average is like 10%, but I think the Bukalapak's take rate is still like 1%, around 1%. So they think if they hike that, then Bukalapak's earnings will improve. It's been improving, but the analysts believe that it's going to improve much quicker. So they see the stock price going up in the near future. The flip side of that is obviously if you increase the take rate, e-commerce competition is quite fierce in Indonesia. So these people on the platform, Bukalapak platform, they might jump ships to other platforms. So they've got a tricky balancing act to do. But overall, it's they haven't performed well, but at least analysts think that the only way is up.
Great. I don't know if you have the data. How does 3.5 billion market valuation stand in the Indonesian stock exchange?
I don't have like data per se, but when they listed, it was the biggest IPO in Indonesia. It was around they were worth, I think, 7.5 billion, something like that.
All right.
And I think they became like the 13th biggest company listed on the stock exchange. I haven't got the data as of now, but I should say that they're obviously much lower down than 13th now.
Of course.
But still quite high, I think.
Great. Thank you so much. Now, now that Grab is listed, we are seeing much more detailed financial numbers. Obviously, they used to be private, so they didn't disclose these numbers. But now that they're listed companies, we're seeing more numbers, and we obviously know what the market valuation of Grab is. It's changing day by day, obviously. Now, if you look at these numbers, how does Grab compare with other related internet giants, especially in the world? Kentaro, you wrote about this article. Could you briefly explain it to us?
Yeah, so in terms of financial numbers, Grab is still a small company compared to Uber, for example. Grab's revenue for the third quarter this year was 157 million US dollar, whereas Uber's revenue was 4.8 billion US dollar in the same quarter. And most tech companies in this space, Uber, DoorDash, still make losses, but Grab's loss relative to their revenue size is quite big. Grab reported a net loss of $988 million for the third quarter. So I would say Grab is still pretty much in the growth stage when compared to global tech peers, prioritizing investment in growth over profitability. And in terms of market cap, Grab is currently valued around $26 billion, and which is I think less than half of market cap of Uber or DoorDash. But of course, they operate in different markets, and investors have different expectations. In Southeast Asia, Grab has the leading market share in most of their core businesses. So, and also unlike Uber or DoorDash, Grab has the financial business, which could be a unique competitive edge in the future.
Great, thank you. I think this is an interesting list. So if you could, you can sort of play with it. And when you look at this chart, we notice that there's Didi, so that's the Chinese ride-sharing giant there, and Didi has decided to pull out from the U.S. market quite recently. And there are also other various new rules that the Chinese government is posing on U.S. listed Chinese companies. So there's a risk. So how will this sort of China-related risks on U.S. Listed companies affect the outlook of Southeast Asian tech public companies, including Grab? What are analysts saying? Kentaro?
Yes, so I think most analysts say China's regulatory crackdowns on their local companies is a tailwind for Southeast Asian startups because more investors will look at other emerging markets like Southeast Asia, India as alternative investment destinations. And there are too many risks in investing in Chinese tech stocks now, but many investors want to diversify away from the US. So in that sense, Southeast Asian companies, including Grab, can be interesting alternative for those investors.
Indeed, yeah, true. Yes, and the venture capitalists, so they are the one that invest in these startups prior to the listing. They've seen the stock performance of now listed Grab and now listed Bukalapak. What are they saying, Shotaro? Are they still optimistic, or are they still sort of cautious? Are they cautious now? What's their reaction?
Oh, they're obviously still optimistic. There's still a lot of growth to be had in this region, and the China factor that Kentaro just mentioned obviously plays in as well. But if you look back, that's actually been going on before the whole China tech crackdown. The US-China geopolitical tensions have meant that global investors were starting to think that maybe it's a bit risky investing in China. So this trend has been going on for a couple of years now, which is now exacerbated by this China's tech crackdown. And so, as Kentaro said, people are looking at Southeast Asia, not just the listed companies, but the private companies. It's a good chance for them to invest. That we've seen this year a couple of funds, Southeast Asia focused funds, close at hefty after hefty fundraising. There was an Indonesian venture capital called Alpha JWC Ventures, which is one of the largest VCs here. They closed. When did I write the article? It was in November. They said they closed a $433 million fund. And they said it's the largest early stage fund in Southeast Asia. So that obviously, it's not just the VCs, right? It's the LPs, the limited partners that are pouring money into these VCs. They're obviously, if they weren't optimistic on this region and the startups in this region, they wouldn't be putting their money into these funds. So it proves that they're still optimistic. And another interesting thing that this Alpha JWC announcement was they actually disclosed their internal rate of return, which not many funds do. And their second fund with a vintage of 2018, this is 2018, so only 2 or 3 years ago from now, it had an IRR of 87%, which is massive. Yes, 87%,
That
which
is
is massive.
Yeah.
So if you think about the asset classes, the global asset classes, how like 87% return. I know it's calculate. I mean, how you calculate returns is different asset to asset. And you can't just say 87%. Well, we should better invest in startups than investing in bonds or stocks. I know you can't say that, but 87% return in this day and age, with this ultra low interest rate environment, I think that shows that there's actually return to be had in this region as well.
Do you know which companies were included in these funds? Where they invested in?
Alpha JWC has
80 plus IRR fund.
Oh, the fund itself, I should have it somewhere in my laptop, but not on my
maybe
not immediately.
That's okay. Maybe we'll see it in the article in the future.
Yeah.
All right, cool. So and adding to this, now another giant unicorn in Southeast Asia, which is GoTo, is also preparing to be listed soon. Now, Shotaro, you've been covering GoTo, Gojek, Tokopedia for a long time. Could you briefly explain to us what GoTo? I mean, maybe people know what GoTo does, but there was a merger and etc. So could you explain that process? And most importantly, how its public listing schedule is looking so far?
Yes, so Gojek, the largest tech company, private tech company in Indonesia, and Tokopedia, which was, I think, around second largest tech company in Indonesia. They merged in May, I think it was, and they became this massive behemoth called GoTo, and they are now obviously by far the largest private tech company in Indonesia. They do everything from ride hailing, payments, grocery deliveries, food deliveries, even digital banks now. So they're this massive, just a tech conglomerate, tech titan in Indonesia. In terms of their IPO, so they were actually planning to list this year on the idea. So they're looking for a dual listing in Indonesia and the US. They were actually looking to list in Indonesia this year, but that was kind of delayed because they were waiting for a regulation change by Indonesia's Financial Services Authority, in that Indonesia currently doesn't allow dual class shares, which just to explain to people who don't know what that is, it's basically where it's a way of founders to retain control of the company, essentially. So it's not one share, one vote. It's one share, like 10 votes or 20 votes. So and founders hold on to those shares, so that they might not hold much in the company, but they have all the voting powers. So they were waiting for that. That finally came recently. The OJK, which is the Financial Services Authority in Indonesia, they finally changed the regulations, and they should be all set to list within the first half of next year, latest.
Okay, so will the US and the local listing, does it take at the same time, or is there going to be some delays? Do they list Indonesia first?
Yeah, I think it's Indonesia first, and then US later.
I see. And as we discussed, Grab went through Grab was listed through a merger with SPAC, Special Purpose Acquisition Company. How is GoTo looking at it? Is it a traditional IPO, or will they also look at SPAC opportunities?
It should be a traditional listing. What's interesting was actually Tokopedia, before they merged with Gojek, there were talks of them merging with a SPAC and listing in the US. I think it was a SPAC by Peter Thiel and Richard Lee. But that talk kind of broke down, and then Gojek came in and merged. And if my sources are telling me the truth, then it should be a traditional IPO.
All right, thank you. All right, so both Grab and GoTo, which we've been discussing about, they compete quite fiercely and directly in the Southeast Asian market. and it's probably the biggest rivalry in the region. What is Grab's strength and weakness, Kentaro? And then following that, what's GoTo's strength and weakness, Shotaro? First, Kentaro, please.
I think one big difference is that Grab is a more a regional company operating in 8 markets in Southeast Asia, whereas GoTo, they operate in several markets, but is primarily focused on the Indonesia market. And then Grab has the #1 ride-hailing market shares in most of the 8 markets, and they also have about 50% market share in food delivery regionally. And their GrabPay e-wallet is the most used e-wallet in Singapore and Malaysia. So I think that demonstrates Grab's ability of building a business and executing their strategy in multiple markets. I think that's Grab's strength. And of course, but doing business in 8 markets means Grab is more exposed to risks like currency fluctuation or regulatory changes in different markets, or country-specific political risks, like what happened in Myanmar this year. But overall, I think Grab has successfully set up their business across the region in a short period of time.
Interesting. And Shotaro, GoTo?
I mean, if you ask the GoTo people, they'll probably say, well, we do similar stuff to Grab, but we just do it better.
Right.
And I keep asking them, how do you measure that? And they say, well, they don't give a clear answer. But I guess to me, the GoTo's biggest strength is that it's an Indonesian company. So Indonesia is by far the largest economy in Southeast Asia. Its internet market is by far the largest, according to the often quoted Google, Temasek, and Bain report. And I mean, it's not that Indonesian people don't like Grab. They like Grab. They use it every day. But there's obviously, it's especially, I think, among the political elites, there's always this feeling that Grab is a foreign company, and it's not like it's not like they like Grab. They have government programs alongside Grab, so they're obviously cooperating. But when push comes to shove, they're obviously going to choose their own Indonesian born and bred startup, and that will probably come in handy. I don't know when, but down the road. Another thing is GoTo, obviously, the Gojek and Tokopedia merger, they have a dedicated e-commerce arm, which has seen a massive growth during the pandemic, which Grab doesn't have. They do have kind of online grocery service and that kind of stuff, and they do ancillary services related to e-commerce. But this, having a dedicated e-commerce arm directly under their control, I think bodes well for them in the long run.
Yeah, I think that's true. It's really interesting. It's kind of like, I mean, the size obviously is different, but it's like a merger between Amazon and Uber, right? So that's what happened.
Yeah,
and there's even a DoorDash aspect to it, and some of a PayPal aspect as well. So it's really a tech conglomerate in Indonesia. I mean, so both Kentaro and I live in Singapore, so we use, especially during the pandemic, we use Grab Food and whatnot. So Grab may be the app that we use most commonly. But Shotaro, you live in Jakarta, where these two companies compete, against each other. What does it look like? I mean, when you walk around the city, which I mean, both companies are green, so it may be hard to sort of
yeah.
So I mean, which cars do you see the most?
I mean, honestly, it's half and half. It's the drivers half and half, with a little bit of orange, because Singapore Sea does food deliveries as well, so they got people waiting outside the shopping malls as well. But honestly, like Grab and Gojek, it's half and half. Even in malls, their payment services, it's, I don't really see. So Grab has a different payment. They couldn't do Grab Pay in Indonesia, so they have a different arm called OVO. But I mean, I rarely see restaurants, shops only accept OVO and not accept GoPay, which is good. That doesn't happen. They always accept both, and other different e-wallet payments as well. So I mean, just on the surface, it's half and half, neck and neck, I would say.
Interesting. Great. Thank you. And Kentaro, I think it was last year, or was it last week? Grab also announced an acquisition of a supermarket, didn't they?
Yes, it was this week, I think. It was an interesting announcement. So they will acquire a supermarket chain called Jaya Grocer in Malaysia. I think this will help expand their delivery business because it's an offline established supermarket chain. They must have know-how of retail business, purchasing groceries from makers or managing inventory. And this company has 40 stores in Malaysia. So these stores can be used as a base for grocery delivery services. And so I think this is one direction of Grab's expansion going forward.
Great, thank you. We looked at Grab's financial result chart earlier. If we can bring it back, that'll be great. If not, that's fine. So Grab and I assume both GoTo. Yes, not that one. Yes, not that one. The financial one. Oh well, this is fine though. So I mean, yeah. So they're this one. Yes, thank you. So they are posting quite a big loss. For profit as a public company now. And also, I'm a bit concerned about the revenue is actually falling as well. So in a startup world, big loss may be okay as long as you can tell your investors that you're investing and capturing market share and growing. However, revenue decline is a bit of a worry. What's happening here, Kentaro? And then could you briefly tell us about what's Grab's growth strategy from here?
I think revenue decline third quarter is primarily because of the lockdowns in Southeast Asia, especially in Vietnam. You know, recovery from Southeast Asia markets were slow in terms of recovery from the pandemic. So Grab's ride-hailing business was quite affected by lockdown measures in some markets in this region. So that's the reason for the decline in their revenue. And going forward, I think one growth pillar drivers will be digital banking business. They acquired a digital banking license in Singapore, which I think they will start operations next year probably. They have not announced the details of the digital banking yet, but I expect they will create a more like customized financial products, services for individuals and small and medium enterprises using their customer data or merchant data they acquired through their existing businesses. I think that's one pillar. And also another pillar I think is interesting is Grab is now also expanding their B2B business. They call it enterprise business. For example, they plan to sell their digital maps or geographical data to external third-party companies. I think that's quite interesting because Grab has invested a lot in creating maps for their transport and delivery business. They collected a lot of geographical information and they identified, for example, very narrow streets or roads in Southeast Asian cities that are not displayed on Google Maps yet. So this could be an interesting business for them as well. And Shotaro just mentioned, Grab does not have e-commerce platform business, but I see Grab is trying to capitalize on the e-commerce boom in this region by building business around e-commerce, like delivery logistics network or buy now, pay later service. I think they partnered with Lazada, which is Alibaba's regional brand, in delivery part of the e-commerce.
Right, cool. And the profit, when are they saying they're going to turn black, as in they're going to start making profit?
Sorry, can you say it again?
When is Grab saying that they will start posting profit, net profit?
I think they have not said when they plan to have net profit, but for EBITDA positive, they said they plan to have positive EBITDA in 2023.
2023. All right, thank you. And same story for GoTo, Shotaro. Obviously, they're not a public company yet, so we don't have a detailed financial numbers, but we assume that they're not yet profitable. What are their growth strategies from now
on? Along the similar lines to Grab, I should think, because as I said, they don't have that dissimilar services. They're broadly similar services. So what Grab is thinking is probably what GoTo is thinking as well. But I think in terms of geography, as I said, Indonesia, their home market, is the largest economy in Southeast Asia. So really focus on Indonesia going forward. They sold off their Thai business to AirAsia a couple of months back. So they're now only in Indonesia, Vietnam, Singapore, I think, and Philippines pending. I don't really know what happened there, but so I think less geography doesn't necessarily mean bad. It allows them to focus their resources on these markets that they want to focus on, and that one of that is obviously Indonesia. So as Indonesia grows, they would probably hope that their business grows with it as well. And I think digital banks is obviously one big thing that they're aiming. They have around 20% stake in a local digital bank called Bank Jago. And they've recently they recently introduced a function which allows people using Gojek app to open an account with Bank Jago. And so if you look at the unbanked population and the underbanked population in Southeast Asia, in Indonesia, it's massive. So that's I think one of the key pillars that they're eyeing going forward.
All right, thank you. So obviously, both of you cover Southeast Asia unicorns besides Grab and GoTo, and some of them may not have even be a unicorn when you started covering, because this was 4 years ago. And it has obviously been a challenging public market debut for Grab. But there are many more Southeast Asia startups that are planning to be listed soon, right? Besides from GoTo. Now, how does the list look? And what do they do? Maybe first from Shotaro in Indonesia.
Yeah, so Traveloka, which is in Indonesia, you have 4 original unicorns: Gojek, Tokopedia, Bukalapak, and Traveloka. And Traveloka is the only one that hasn't listed yet. So they're planning a listing soon. They were in talks to go public via a SPAC that has reportedly fallen through. So I think they're in the process of reassessing their IPO plans right now, but their intention is to go public fairly soon. This is technically a Singaporean company, but there's a company called Finaxel, which does this service, buy now, pay later service called Kredivo in Indonesia, primarily in Indonesia. They announced a couple of months ago that they were going to go public via SPAC. I think it was like the valuation was, I think, something like 2 billion, if I'm not wrong. So that they're going public. There's a logistics company called J&T Express, which we haven't been able to get in touch with, but they are reportedly weighing an IPO as well. They've obviously grown rapidly on the back of the e-commerce boom in the region, and one of their main businesses is actually in China. So they're actually competing with the Alibaba Express and the Chinese logistics company, and they're actually from local reports they're actually doing quite well. Founded by former executives, I think, at Oppo, the Chinese smartphone maker. So they were reportedly in an IPO as well. That's off the top of my head. That's what I know.
All right, thank you. And Kentaro in Singapore.
Yeah, in Singapore, I think we have a company called Property Guru, which is an online real estate platform, also expanding into fintech space. I think they have announced their plan to go public in the US through our SPAC, I think next year. And for the rest of the region, I think this is not a digital startup, but one interesting company would be Being Fast of Vietnam, which is an automaker under local conglomerate Being Group. They also plan to go public in the US.
Interesting. I forgot to ask one question. Compared, I mean, there's another very important Southeast Asian internet company, Sea, right? They went public much earlier than Grab did. I think they went public in 2017, and in fact, they are very highly valued. I think they are listed on New York Stock Exchange, not Nasdaq. So why do you think C is much higher valued compared from Grab? And how does it compare from other companies?
I think C is becoming a more global company. They already have a significant e-commerce presence in Latin America, Brazil specifically, and they also launched e-commerce in some European countries as well as in India. So I guess investors have high expectations on C in terms of their business growth potentials. And also importantly, C has a profitable gaming business, which generates cash for e-commerce expansion. But to be fair, as you can see in this chart, C's share price also dropped significantly over the past weeks, about 30%. I think their share price increased significantly after the pandemic started. So there seems to be some corrections as the stock market conditions change.
Right. And this is when Grab went public, isn't it? When the C's market dropped. Yeah. So it was quite unfortunate. But I mean, obviously it's the long term, as Anthony says. So we'll have to look at it in the longer term.
Yeah.
Now, yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. So before Grab listed, C was the only major Southeast Asian tech startups listed in the US. So if US investors want to invest in Southeast Asia, C was the only option. So yeah, I think they had a kind of first mover advantage in stock markets as well.
Interesting. Great. All right. So we will be taking questions. So I would like to ask last questions to both of you. And as I introduce both of you to the audience, both of you have been covering Grab, Gojek, Tokopedia, and other Southeast Asian startups for about 4 years now, and this is a really long time in a startup world. I mean, things have changed a lot in 4 years in startup world. Now, looking into the future, right? I mean, how do you see the potential of Southeast Asia unicorns, especially after you saw the listing of Grab? Kentaro, how do you see the potential? Are you still optimistic? A bit doubtful? What's your take on this?
Yeah, I think like many people say, I think there are still a lot of untapped opportunities in Southeast Asia, and Grab's Nasdaq listing actually had some effects in terms of drawing global investors' attention to this region. So there will be more venture capital coming into this region. There will be more unicorns and more IPOs in the coming years, which is quite exciting. But that means there will be more competition within the region. And also, as these companies grow, they will be required to have higher standards of social responsibility, like ESG kind of practices, and regulators might increase oversight of these companies. So to summarize, I think there are a lot of potentials in this region, but companies will have to continue to improve their business models so that they can keep attracting investors.
Great. Shotaro?
Yeah, I mean, I agree in principle with what Kentaro said. The growth in this region is set to continue. The digital economy in this region was always going to grow, and it just got accelerated by COVID. But even with that growth, there are still a lot of uncovered areas, even geographically. So in Indonesia, in Jakarta, obviously everyone has a smartphone, a 4G connection, fast internet, that they can reap the benefits of this internet economy. But when you go to some remote islands 5, 6 hours flight from Jakarta. It's still, dumb phones, 3Gs. So the internet economy hasn't penetrated the whole of Indonesia, and I should think that's the same for other Southeast Asian countries as well. So there's still a lot of untapped market. As I said, even the underbanked and the unbanked market, that's a massive segment. So they have a room to grow. They have massive room to grow. But I would one caution, I think, is this region is obviously, the digital economy has grown rapidly, and it's probably grown quicker than what the US saw back in the days. But what that means is that the tech sector hasn't received the backlash that the US tech companies are receiving right now. So if you look at the US, there's obviously these debates over the platforms, whether the big techs have too much power, whether they have too much data. Now, at the moment, these unicorns, these startups, they aren't coming in for those kind of criticisms because they are doing good for the community, which is, say, like Gojek, the drivers, right? They previously probably wouldn't have had proper jobs. And now all of a sudden, thanks to Gojek, there's this they're not formal sector, but it's like a semi-formal sector, right? So they have, regular income, and what that brings is, more stability for the family, better education for the kids. So there's tangible benefits that these unicorns have been able to bring. And that's a massive reason why there hasn't been any criticism towards these big techs in this region. And I don't think that's gonna change like in 1 or 2 years or so. But down the road, 10 years from now, maybe even short time period, if someone starts saying, "Hey, doesn't GoTo, look, I use GoTo every day, but I'm not comfortable with GoTo controlling all of my data," those kind of criticisms, those kind of challenges that the US tech companies are facing at the moment, at some point they will start to catch up with this region as well. And so it'll be interesting to see how these big tech companies adapt to those challenges.
Yeah, interesting. I agree. And then adding to that, I would like to add one more, is that the region has never experienced sort of a downturn on startup funding. So if you look at the United States, Europe, they've experienced a bubble burst in the past. So there's much more resilience, and especially the public investors, they're used, maybe not recently because the stock price has been red hot, but I think that's one factor. Would if there, there will be at some point, if there is a bust, would investors come back? Would the entrepreneurs come back? So that'll be an interesting one. But yeah, hopefully that won't happen. All right, thank you. So we do have a few questions here, and I'll try to get it out here. Okay, so we kind of discussed about this, but do you see the initial decline as a bad sign? I'm assuming this is about Grab's listing, Kentaro. So it dropped quite dramatically initially. Is this a bad sign?
It's still 2 weeks, so it's difficult to say it's bad or good. But I think there was kind of some sort of disappointment in terms of the initial decline. So I think it's a kind of wake-up call for other ASEAN startups in terms of what is the realistic valuation is.
Right, but at the same time, as we've been discussing, this was not a regular or traditional initial public offering. And usually when they do initial public offering, they will ask all the investors what could be the company's valuation, what are the investors' appetite, and then they will set the IPO price. And in this case, they didn't really do that. Yes, the stock has been declining, but I feel it wasn't bad than it could have been. So yeah, so as Kentaro and Anthony, the group CEO, says, I think we will have to look at in the long term. All right. So there is another one. This might be interesting. So considering that there are still uncertainties due to COVID, especially Omicrons, Is this the right time for all the startups to go public? Do you hear anything, Shotaro?
I
That they
haven't
might
talked. No, delaying.
right, exactly, yeah.
No, I haven't heard any people saying we're going to delay. It's, I mean, for the funds that invested in these startups, they kind of want them to go public, right? Because it's been around, almost 10 years since they were first founded, and a normal life cycle of a fund is 7 to 10 years, so they would
Right.
want their money back. So there's obviously pressure from investors to go public. I mean, with regards to Omicron, it's just there's too much uncertainty to really base any judgments on. So I haven't heard anyone saying we're going to cancel, but I haven't really talked to anyone about the Omicron yet. But the sense is that the GoTos and the Travelocas will probably still head towards IPO. Yes, the market condition may be maybe not too favorable, but I don't think. Well, we don't know enough yet to completely say, look, this is going to be such bad timing that we need to put it off.
Great. This is another interesting one, which I don't really know the answer, but both of you may know. So it says, any thoughts of Grab's transitioning to net zero transportation? So this is the use of electronic vehicles and whatnot, being more environmentally friendly, which is a very important factor once you're a public company. Of course, it's still an important factor when you're a private company. But what are they doing? What is Grab doing on this front, Kentaro?
I think they have already introduced electric vehicles in some markets, and this year they released ESG report in June, I think, and in that report they said they will announce a roadmap to net zero emission future next year, I think. So we will see what they are going to do next year. And in terms of EV, I think Gojek is more. Gojek has some initiatives already.
Go ahead, Shotaro.
Yeah, so Gojek signed a deal with Taiwan's GoGo, which is a two-wheel EV maker. I think they're called the Tesla of EV, Tesla of two wheels.
Okay.
In Taiwan, they signed a deal in early November, and I think they're currently carrying out tests where they give these GoGo scooters, electric scooters, to Gojek drivers and see whether they like it or not. So they're gonna set up some battery. So it's not the GoGo scooter isn't an EV where you charge. You actually replace the battery at a battery changing station. So they're going to set up some battery changing stations, and how many was it? Something like 5,000 motorbikes apparently. So quite a lot. And they have a pledge to go net zero by 2030.
Okay.
And transform all of their fleets, 4 wheels and 2 wheels, into EVs by then. So this is just a start for them. They are determined to go net zero.
That's interesting. Have you tried riding on one of these e-bikes?
I can't find them actually. They're not in my area.
I see. All right. Maybe soon. Let's see. This may be an interesting one. I'm assuming this person does not live in Southeast Asia. Have conventional taxi companies been fully replaced by ride-hailing in Southeast Asia? If not, what would be their remaining value and how are they trying to survive? I know the answer in Singapore, but I'll let you answer, Kentaro.
Yeah, in Singapore, there is a big transport company called Comfort Delgro, which is quite big, and I think they compete very well with Grab. But they are also launching kind of super app. Recently, they started, I think, food delivery or this kind of non-transport business as well. So they coexist and compete.
Right. In Jakarta, Shotaro?
So we have a famous taxi company called Bluebird, and I forgot which way around it was, but either Gojek invested in Bluebird or Bluebird invested in Gojek. But they are part of the Gojek ecosystem, so you can call Bluebird taxis via Gojek, and you can pay Bluebird taxi fees using GoPay, which is Gojek's GoTo's payment app. So they're still coexisting, and they are trying to. I think before they struck this partnership with Gojek, they didn't really have like a dedicated app for taxi hailing. But after the investment, they came up with one. It's still a bit buggy, but it works well enough. And I mean, in terms of it's I think the market segment is a bit different. So I think taxis, the price is a bit higher, I think, compared to ride-hailing. I think. So yeah, I remember when I talked to the CEO of Bluebird a couple of years ago. This was before the pandemic, so the situation might have changed. But what she was saying was it's aiming for a different customer segment. So people who want quick rides, they just use ride-hailing. But people who want she said comfortable right. service and security, because you're in a car and everyone knows that you're riding in a Bluebird. If you want that kind of security, then people will continue to choose Bluebird even if it's priced a bit higher. So I think that's where the coexistence comes in.
Interesting. And another question is, I'm not sure which market this is referring to, but it says, any specific reason why Grab is not the #1 leader in e-wallet? Do you know what Kentaro?
I think it's because of the regulation. Finance space is quite highly regulated. Grab, I think they are not able to have their own GrabPay business in some markets in this region. I think that's the primary reason.
I see. And with the digital bank, will this be solved, or what's your take on it?
I think digital banks, I think same. It highly depends on regulation in different markets.
Right. I forgot to ask, you mentioned that Grab is entering digital banking in Singapore, and Shotaro has mentioned that Gojek partnered with Bank Jago and they're starting their offering. What's Grab's strategy on digital banking in Indonesia, which is one of the most populous country in Southeast Asia and most important actually?
Kentaro, do you want to answer?
Well, whichever is fine. Maybe Shotaro can answer since it's Indonesian.
I mean, so Deal Street Asia, which is our sister publication, our subsidiary, they reported that they will be part of a consortium which is gonna buy some stakes in a local bank called Bank Fama, I think it was. And this actually comes from their relationship with MTech, which is a media conglomerate in Indonesia. So they have a partnership. MTech has some shares in Grab Indonesia, and Grab has some shares in MTech. So they're trying to. And by the way, MTech is the largest shareholder in Bukalapak as well. So it's this this partnership that they're trying to nurture, and I think. The regulation was recently changed to allow it to make it easy for foreign companies to take over banks in Indonesia. But I think Grab, because they have a strong local conglomerate in MTech, I think they decided that it's better if they partnered with them and went into the sector rather than just go on their own. But I don't know if I haven't been able to substantiate that piece of news, so I don't know. But it's what Deal Street Asia said.
All right, cool. So we'll definitely expect extra reporting from you, Shotaro, on this. So the time's almost up. I would like to sort of round up the discussion. Thank you, Kentaro and Shotaro, for the great discussion. And we would like to express our sincere thanks to our speakers, which is both of you and you who watched and contributed great questions for this webinar. After the webinar is done, there will be a questionnaire. So please kindly take a minute of your time to fill out the short survey to help us host more interesting events in the future. The link is in the chat box, and the QR code, as you can see, is on the screen. And please consider supporting Nikkei Asia by purchasing subscription. There are tons of great articles throughout Asia. You will get full access to stories told by today's speakers, including myself, as well as our award-winning 100+ teams of dedicated reporters and editors throughout Asia and rest of the world. Thank you again all for joining us today, and we hope to see you again soon. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.